Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam
on 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me. 5 o'clock. Good morning. It is Monday, June 9th. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Going to see some showers this morning, clouds this afternoon, high 67. Tonight and overnight, more rain, low 63. And then Tuesday, some scattered thunderstorms, high 75. If you are walking out the door with us right now, it's 61 and cloudy in Islip out on Long Island. It's 62 and cloudy in Fairhaven over in New Jersey. And it's 62 and a little bit of rain right outside our Midtown studios.
The top 5 at 5.
Cops fight with protesters in Los Angeles. A strange story of a senior found floating in the water in Brooklyn. Why was a body in the back of an abandoned ambulance? There's a parking scam you need to know about. And cops were out in force on Jones Beach this weekend. All right, 5:01, let's get into it. This is not the biggest story of the day, but boy, I was inundated with people getting in touch with me over the last 2 days over this huge parking scam. So maybe in some ways it is the biggest story of the day. The New York City Department of Transportation warning drivers about this parking payment scam that tons of people have fallen for. Scammers have posted these QR codes on parking meters all throughout the 5 boroughs. And it looks like this is the way you're able to pay for parking or for parking tickets. And you go on to this site where this QR code takes you, and it looks legit. People have been putting in their information, and all of a sudden they realize they're out money, and there's no way of getting it back.
We got to be able to feel safe spending our money without that being tarnished, especially if we're moving to the digital age and we're using technology. We want technology to be a safe platform that we can use.
Yes, so some people sending me pictures of this QR code over the weekend that was right above the meters, you know, those meters that are on certain streets, and it totally looks legit. And the New York City DOT says it's now going to inspect all meters throughout this week. They want us, though, to warn you about the fact that a lot of them are still up because they can't get to all of them before, the week starts.
Retiree, so, I got to watch. I got to be very careful.
Well, if it's happening to one of us, it can happen to any one of us.
Yeah, so the parking department, by the way, they're asking anyone who sees these fake QR codes on these parking meters to rip them down. They want help doing it because they think they're all over the place. And then they want you to go to 311 and report the fact that you found one of these fake QR codes on a parking meter. So if you're parking in the city today, make sure you're using that Park NYC app to pay your parking. Don't click on that QR code that's on the actual parking meter. Apparently none of them are legit, but apparently there are a ton of them out there this morning. 5:03. A man's recovering after being stabbed on board a sightseeing bus in Manhattan.
It happened just before 11:30 Saturday morning along State Street. Police say the 26-year-old victim was the driver of the tourist bus and was stabbed twice by 2 males following a dispute that turned physical. The 2 suspects took off and the victim was taken to the hospital where he's expected to survive. The exact circumstances surrounding the shooting remain unknown. So far, no arrests.
WABC News Time 5:03. The jury continues deliberations this morning in the retrial of Harvey Weinstein.
One juror asked to leave the bench after he says the jurors are not following the court rules. Juror number 7 told the judge he heard other members gossiping about a fellow member of the jury. Deliberations began on Thursday and continued through Friday, with the procedure continuing today. The panel of 7 women and 5 men are debating a criminal rape case for which Weinstein was found guilty for in 2020. The conviction was overturned last year due to testimony from women not directly tied to the case. The disgraced Hollywood producer who triggered the Me Too movement is also serving a 16-year sentence in a separate California sex crimes case. I'm Liz Radabali for 77 WABC News.
And this morning, Harvey Weinstein himself will sit down for a conversation with our own Sid Rosenberg, an exclusive. I don't know that he's done any interviews. Am I right about that? I don't remember hearing him doing any recent interviews. So this should be really interesting as he waits for the verdict come in. Harvey Weinstein himself will sit down with Sid at 6:25 this morning. So you want to make sure you're listening. At 6:25 this morning is Harvey Weinstein and Sid, I assume, talk about the trial and a whole lot more. 5:05. This is a strange story out of Brooklyn. A 84-year-old woman was found floating unconscious in the water over the weekend at the Greenpoint Ferry landing. And it's just so odd. I mean, the good news is she's okay today, but police can't figure out how she got in the water and how she was able to survive in the water.
I come to this area pretty often because I live in the neighborhood, and I am really surprised to hear that happened.
Scary. I mean, I wonder how she ended up in the water. Like, why is she alone?
Yeah.
Why is she out here? Also at night. That is super surprising.
So there was no screams for help. Lots of people walk along the water here. The discovery made near India and West Streets. The woman, she's fished out of the water after someone spots her. They call in the Marine crew. They call in the NYPD Water Patrol. They come in. They take this woman out of the water. They bring her to. They take her to Bellevue Hospital, and now the latest is what they're telling us is that she's going to be okay, but they still haven't unraveled how she ended up there in the first place.
I haven't heard or seen anything like that in my time living here. I think in this particular neighborhood here, it's mostly younger folks, more like Gen Z, millennials that I see for the most part. I don't often see senior folks around here.
Yeah, so witnesses at the scene said it was just odd. She wasn't like floating in anything, you know. They don't know how she got into the water. Nobody's been able to figure this out. I imagine as she speaks to detectives and police at the hospital, they'll get a sense of how she ended up in the water and if there was anything sinister behind it. But just an odd story out of Brooklyn this morning. WABC News Time 5:08. At least 2,000 anti-ICE protesters taking over a major highway in downtown Los Angeles yesterday while rioters lit self-driving cars on fire as the LAPD chief admitted his officers were just completely overwhelmed by the violence and the vandalism on what is the third day of demonstrations in that city. The massive crowd at one point moving on to the 101 freeway, which is one of the most congested freeways probably in the country, blocking traffic. At about 4 o'clock yesterday, here's the LAPD chief.
Individuals out there shooting commercial-grade fireworks at our officers, that can kill you.
Now, he says these demonstrators, most of them not from Los Angeles, but they are people there just to cause chaos.
To say that we would go to that right away, I'd say we wouldn't have been there yet. Looking at the violence tonight, I think we got to make a reassessment.
Yeah, so the intense part, and there's a lot of intense parts about this, was there's one point I was watching this video earlier this morning. These protesters are picking up pieces of concrete and throwing it at these police officers.
They'll take backpacks, and the backpack will have a cinder block in it. They have a hammer, and they'll break up the cinder block and use that, pass it around to throw at officers, to throw at cars, and throw at other people. Even more disgusting that many of the people who were doing this come in from other places just to hurt people and to cause havoc.
So police in riot gear have been moving in. They are firing off tear gas on the streets of downtown L.A. after federal immigration raids sparked these protests. They began on Friday. It sounded a lot like that in Los Angeles much of the weekend. The mayor there, Karen Bass, she says she's disappointed with how the protests have turned out, but she says the deployment of the National Guard troops over the weekend is just adding fuel to the fire.
It's the last thing our city needs. Our city is still trying to recover from the wildfires.
She says she's been in contact with the Trump administration, but she says they're not being cooperative. Bass says she wants more info on when and where ICE agents may pop up next.
We do not need to see our city torn apart. the raids could continue. We're hearing that the National Guard is going to be here, so it's uncertain. But that's exactly the problem. Because we don't need in this city to go to sleep tonight and wake up in the morning and find out about people running through Home Depot parking lots being chased by ICE officers.
Bass says she's frustrated when the protests turned violent.
That's not peaceful, what was happening. It's not peaceful for people to be on the highways. It's not peaceful for people to throw rocks or bottles. That's not peaceful.
Michael Monks has been reporting from the scene all weekend long, says troopers responded immediately when confronted, but it has been very intense.
Those shields went down, the helmet mask came down, and the pushing started, the tear gas started, and this crowd was cleared out in an instant.
Yeah, Michael Monks on the scene says demonstrators threw bottles, and then you heard just backpacks full with pieces of concrete at police officers, National Guard troops.
I got a little tear gassy, definitely burning in the eyes, choking a little bit, but I think it cleared up pretty fast. We were back over in a media huddle, all of us just temporarily blinded and choking.
Yeah, President Trump ordering that deployment of 2,000 members of the California National Guard to Los Angeles County.
A lot of people are wearing masks anyway, some in full-fledged gas masks, others in more makeshift masks, but they're prepared with milk and water and other types of liquids that they've learned to use should tear gas come out.
Now, we were watching this earlier this morning. It seems a little quieter. But President Trump, sent in these troops. You have Democrats pushing back against that idea. Here's California Democratic Congresswoman Nanette Berrigan says she objects to this move.
We haven't asked for the help. We don't need the help. This is him escalating it, causing tensions to rise. It's only going to make things worse in a situation where people are already angry over immigration enforcement.
But when you hear from police, they say they've been overwhelmed by these crowds.
We've been told to get ready for 30 days of enforcement, 30 days of ICE enforcement. So 2,000 troops to be there for that enforcement. It's a concern. I mean, it's going to escalate the situation. There is no disagreement on that. I think that's an effort that we can all say. But this is not what's happening. We are having an administration that's targeting peaceful protests, people that are there to protest.
President Trump would disagree with that. He spoke to reporters just briefly on his way to Camp David yesterday about what was going on in California.
If we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. It's about law and order.
Yeah, he says Gavin Newsom needs to do more to bring down what's going on there, but he doesn't have hopes that he will. And he says the governor should be held accountable, and so should these protests.
You have violent people, and we're not going to let them get away with it.
And then Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, she was on the news shows over the weekend. She says the move bringing the National Guard troops in is necessary because California Governor Newsom hasn't taken the situation seriously enough.
Governor Newsom has proven that he makes bad decisions. The president knows that he makes bad decisions, and that's why the president chose the safety of this community over waiting for Governor Newsom to get some sanity. My hope is always that we work with local leaders that would do their jobs, and that is what has failed in L.A., is that the mayor has refused to recognize the dangerous situation that she's perpetuating, as well as the governor.
These 2,000 National Guard soldiers that are being engaged today are ones that are specifically trained for this type of crowd situation where they'll be with the public and be able to provide safety.
Now, there was some talk about going after protests who are wearing masks to conceal their identity and I guess to help with the tear gas, and they're going to go after those as well.
National Guard soldiers are there to provide security for operations and to make sure that we have peaceful protests. So that's what their work is, and I won't get more specific on that just because we never do.
Okay, of course, we'll continue to follow this story all morning long right here, 77 WABC. 5:15, let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk. Happy Monday. Good morning, Justin Ellett.
Happy Monday. Good morning to you, Noam Laden. We'll start here on the diamond in Colorado. Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil each hit 2 of New York's 6 home runs, and the Mets routed the Rockies 13-5 to sweep the Major League's worst ball club for the second time in a week. Brett Beatty and Francisco Alvarez also went deep for the Mets, who completed a 5-2 of road trip and finished 6-0 against Colorado. This season, they moved a season-best 18 games over 500 at 42-24 and opened a 4.5-game lead in the NL East over skidding Philadelphia. Juan Soto went 3 for 3 with 3 walks and 3 runs on a perfect day at the plate, reaching base 6 times in a game for the first time in his career. Alonso launched a pair of 2-run shots for his 23rd multi-homer game, breaking a tie with Darryl Strawberry for the most in Mets history. He went deep in the third and eighth to give him 17 homers and 61 RBI this year. McNeil connected leading off the second inning and added a 3-run shot in the fourth for his third career multi-homer game. Alonso and McNeil both finished with 3 hits and 4 RBI. Alvarez also had 3 of New York's 17 hits. Tyler McGill allowed 2 runs over 5 innings to win for the second time in his last 8 starts. Paul Blackburn worked 4 innings for his first major league save. Following an off day today, the Mets will open a 3-game series at home against the Washington Nationals starting tomorrow night in the Bronx. The Yankees dropped the finale and rubber game of their 3-game series against the Red Sox. Final score 11-7. The loss goes to Carlos Rodon. He went 5 innings, 3 hits, gave up 5 runs, had 5 Ks and 3 walks in his outing. Home runs from DJ LeMahieu, his second of the year, 5th inning. Judge hit a shot as well, the 23rd for him this year in the first inning off Dobbins, and then he went deep again in the 9th inning off of Stock, and RBIs from Grisham over RBI walk in the bottom of the 6th, Chisholm a sac fly in the bottom of the 6th as well. Following an off day for the Yanks today, they'll open a 3-game series in Kansas City against the Royals starting tomorrow night. To the NBA, your final from Oklahoma City, the Thunder beat the Pacers 123-107 in Game 2 of the NBA Finals. That series is now tied at 1 game apiece. And on the ice tonight in the Stanley Cup Finals, you get Game 3 between the Oilers and the Panthers. That's at 8 p.m. from Florida. That's
Did you see
the
Carlos Alcaraz match?
Oh, yeah. He won that
Sinner?
tennis tournament, right?
Yeah, 5.5 hours they were on the court yesterday. 5.5 hours.
Wow.
Alcaraz was down 2-0, came back and then won the next 3 sets to take the French Open. But the fact that they were standing out there playing tennis for 5.5 hours, I think it may have been the longest match in French Open history, but I started to watch it when I saw Alcaraz go down 2-0. I took the dog for a long walk, and I came back and I was like, oh my God, this thing is still going.
Unbelievable. Who was he playing against?
Sinner.
Oh, there you go. Isn't that guy an American?
Italian.
Oh,
yeah.
Never mind. But, of course, you remember, these marathon tennis matches, you remember, it had to have been 5 or 6 years ago at this point, but you had those 2 Americans going head-to-head. I know one of them was Isner at some. Remember that one? That one went 7 or 8 hours or went overnight. They had to resume it the next day.
That's right. But they got to rest in between. This one, there was usually sometimes they'll take a bathroom break, but it's really just to go sit down in the locker room for a minute.
Yeah.
No, none of that. They were on the court the entire 5.5 hours. It was incredible.
Unbelievable. Nobody faking an injury just to get a breather or anything like that?
To show you what kind of athletes they are.
Unbelievable.
To have that stamina is outrageous. Yeah.
How about that? All right, Carlos Alcaraz in the French Open. All right. That's your Sports Gnome. I'm Justin Ellick on 77 WABC.
WABC News Time 521. The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador and became this flashpoint of President Trump's immigration policy back in the U.S. to face criminal charges now. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi says Kilmar Abrego Garcia will be charged with human trafficking.
The grand jury found that over the past 9 years, Abrego Garcia has played a significant role in an alien smuggling ring.
Now, Abrego Garcia was sent to prison in El Salvador from Maryland on what the Trump administration originally said was an administrative error, but later said he was a member of MS-13. Bondi says Abrego Garcia made over 100 human smuggling trips into the U.S. and will be returned to El Salvador once he's found guilty.
Thousands of illegal aliens were smuggled. This is especially disturbing because Abrego Garcia is also alleged with transporting minor children.
And Bondi says this operation was widespread.
It is alleged this defendant is part of the same smuggling ring responsible for the death of more than 50 migrants in 2021 after the tractor trailer overturned in Mexico. This is part of that same ring.
WABC News Time 522. President Vladimir Zelensky says Ukraine needs to respond to Russia's aggression with even more force. He was on ABC This Week yesterday said that the reason for last week's strikes on warplanes deep inside Russia was they need to get them off guard.
We have to prepare such plans because Russia can't, because we don't really know if they will stop this war. They don't want to stop the war. This is the problem.
Zelensky says he believes that 34% of Russia's strategic aircraft were destroyed in those attacks. Zelensky says he wants President Trump to put more pressure on Russia, including stronger sanctions to help bring an end to the war.
I think he's publicly said about it, and I know that he shared this information with some people around him, and I think this operation, and I said it a lot of times, it's not true.
And it was called Operation Spiderweb, this successful thing done by Ukraine, where drones struck deep inside Russian territory. He says it was well planned and it worked as well as they planned it.
They knew exactly where to hit, and they did it exactly what was in their idea. Step by step, they did very clear this operation.
5:23. Israel has stopped an aid ship that's bound for Gaza, carrying Swedish activist Greta Thunberg.
The people on board have been detained and transported to Israel. The ship, launched by the Freedom Flotilla Coalition to deliver aid to Palestinians, called the boarding an assault in international waters. Israel's foreign ministry said the passengers are expected to return to their home countries. I'm Mark Mayfield.
WABC News Time 524. The number of measles cases nearing a 30-year high in the U.S.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said Friday there are now over 1,100 confirmed cases of measles across 33 states nationwide. CDC data shows a total of just 258 cases in the U.S. last year. Federal health officials say 95% of this year's confirmed cases are in people who are unvaccinated or their vaccination status is unknown. I'm Lisa Carton.
Did you see the labor statistics, the latest jobs report on Friday? It was good. The numbers were higher than anyone expected. Everybody responding. Senior economic analyst with Bankrate, Mark Hemrick, discussing that report, which found more jobs were added last month than expected.
If anything, I'd say the good news here is that the job market's still cooling. It's not freezing up. People should expect longer job search times. It's more difficult to find some kinds of jobs, but this is hardly recessionary.
But the unemployment rate, it held steady at 4.2%. It's been in that range for 4 to 4.2% since May of 2024.
I think the Federal Reserve is continuing in wait-and-see mode, and why it's not ready to do a whole lot with interest rates right now is because it wants to see the impacts that are more meaningful from tariffs.
And for those new college grads, I have one in my house, he encourages them to practice patience and hard work during their job search.
We are witnessing this remarkable changes in our workplaces and the economy related to technology and artificial intelligence. And so I think it's going to take some patience, hard work on the part of new college grads.
Isn't that true, though, every summer? It's not easy finding a job right out of college. 526, the Army preparing for the largest military parade Washington, D.C. has seen in decades. It's an event President Trump has been pushing for since his first term in office, and will mark the Army's 250th birthday.
I am thrilled to invite everyone to an unforgettable celebration, one like you've never seen before.
The celebration expected to bring 7 million pounds of hardware, and this week road and reinforcement has been underway to protect D.C. infrastructure during the event.
On Saturday, June 14th, which is Flag Day, we are honoring the 250th anniversary of the greatest fighting force in history, the United States Army. For 2.5 centuries, the men and women of America's Army have dominated our enemies and protected our freedom at home.
Yeah, so nearly 7,000 soldiers set to participate, and the parade will take place on June 14th with dozens of tanks, fighting vehicles, all kinds of interesting stuff driving down Washington, D.C.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam
on 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me, 5:36. Good morning. It is Monday, June 9th. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Showers this morning, clouds this afternoon, high 67. Tonight and overnight, more rain, low 63. And then Tuesday, we'll have scattered thunderstorms, high 75. If you are walking out the door with us right now, so happy you are, 61 cloudy and ice slip out on Long Island. It's 62 and cloudy in Fairhaven over in New Jersey, and 62 and drizzling right outside our Midtown studios. 5:39. Let's start out in Brooklyn. This 60-year-old man found dead this weekend in East New York. Now, this is strange. He was found in an abandoned ambulance. Police responding to a 911 call over the weekend where they found the man with a neck injury. He was pronounced dead at the scene. People say they've seen this abandoned ambulance in the neighborhood for a while, never thought twice about it.
Super surprised because, this is really where people come to work. So I'm very surprised that happened. This isn't that type of area, and this is kind of where I'm from. So I never heard of something like that until today.
Police say the Office of the Medical Examiner will now to try to determine the cause of death.
I do still feel safe because, anomalies are anomalies, but I do want to know what happened so that my sisters, I wouldn't feel safe with them going outside.
I always check my surroundings. I look behind every time I walk. And I'm always on the phone. So for me, I feel like I'm safe.
Yeah, now they'll try to figure out whether that body was put there or something else happened. So far, they just don't know. 5:40 from Brooklyn. Let's go up to the Morsania section of the Bronx, where a 14-year-old girl was shot in the face early yesterday morning. It was about 5:30 in the morning when neighbors at this NYCHA development on East 161st Street heard gunfire. At least they thought it was fireworks at first, but then they were told it was gunfire, and then heard people screaming as well.
I heard one, and then I heard two go off. I heard a couple people screaming. First, I just thought it was fireworks, but then it kept happening, so I knew something was going on.
All right, so we don't know the motive, whether they've made any arrests. At least as of last night, cops had not cuffed anybody. The teenager, amazingly, after being shot in the face, they say is going to be okay. She's in stable condition at a hospital in Harlem.
It's hard to tell because, July 4th coming up and typically you do hear stuff, but that's usually people's first thought.
Yeah, no arrests have been made. Details surrounding what led up to that shooting weren't made available as of at least early this morning. 5:41. 84-year-old woman was found floating unconscious in the water at the Greenpoint Ferry landing over the weekend. And it was people who spotted her in the water. She's alive, but they can't figure out how she got in there, how she was able to float for a while.
I come to this area pretty often because I live in the neighborhood, and I am really surprised to hear that happened.
Scary. I mean, I wonder how she ended up in the water.
Yeah.
Like, why is she alone? Why is she out here? Also at night. That is surprising.
The discovery was made near India and West Streets. This is an area where people, walk all the time, so they were just shocked to see this body out in the water. Now, she's apparently going to be just fine.
Haven't heard or seen anything like that in my time living here. I think in this particular neighborhood here, it's mostly younger folks, more like Gen Z, millennials that I see for the most part. I don't often see senior folks around here.
Yeah, police investigating, trying to figure out how she ended up in the water, whether there was something sinister behind it all. 5:42 from Brooklyn. Let's go out to Long Island. Over the weekend, beachgoers at Jones Beach were screened by cops before they were able to hit the sand. Coolers were checked, bags were checked. It was all to ensure safety on the beach after chaos broke out on Thursday. This was a senior cut day thing. This is, high school seniors always do the senior cut day every year. And it was on Jones Beach, and it got out of hand. About 500 people showed up. So they didn't want a repeat of that, and they wanted to make people going to Jones Beach feel like everything's going to be okay over the weekend.
We've had senior cut day for decades. That's nothing unusual, and we are prepared for that.
What was different is that there was a report of a gun in the crowd.
Yeah, so that was the issue. Now, that turned out to be an imitation gun, but of course cops didn't know that as they raced to the beach on Thursday.
What we think happened was in the middle of the crowd, there was an impromptu boxing match that took place. Yeah. And the crowd was around that boxing match, and that indicated that people thought there was fights going on all over the crowd. And we don't think that happened.
So these senior cut days have caused problems in years past. So on Long Beach, where they had the same issue last year with the senior cut day, they were ready for it. They were scrubbing social media, looking for any announcement of a senior cut day. And so that's why it may have ended up at Jones Beach instead of Long Beach this year.
It's too soon to take a victory lap, but I'll say that closing the beaches last week we think was very successful. There was no party here and no crowd.
Last year, a teenager was actually shot during an out-of-control gathering that about 2,000 teenagers showed up at. Same sort of thing, a teen cut day, and police say they were proactive this year. They reached out to schools. They let people know the beach is closed during the day. Seniors, high school seniors, are not allowed on it.
We reached out to every school district in Nassau County. We sent them a letter early May, and we followed up with an email later on that month. And we've had a lot of communication between a lot of school districts, and I found it's been helpful.
Yeah, so that worked for Long Beach this year. 544. Let's bring it back into the city. NYPD divers have found the body of a teenage girl who vanished in the East River a week ago.
Investigators say 15-year-old Grace Illagene had been swept away by a strong current after going into the East River on May 30th. The New York Post reports a friend had tried to discourage her from going in because she didn't know how to swim. NYPD divers found her body after a week-long search. That same day, they also found the bodies of two men. One was floating near the Brooklyn Bridge, while the other man was found near 34th Street and the FDR Drive. The medical examiner will determine the cause of death for each victim. I'm Lisa Salvati.
WABC News Time, 5:45. Let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk and Justin Ella.
Thank you, Noam later. Start here on the diamond in Colorado. Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil each hit two of New York's 6 home runs, and the Mets routed the Rockies 13-5 to sweep the Major League's worst ball club for the second time in a week. Brett Baty and Francisco Alvarez also went deep for the Mets, who completed a 5-2 road trip and finished 6-0 against Colorado. This season, they moved the season-best 18 games over 500 at 42-24 and opened a 4.5-game lead in the NL East over skidding Philadelphia. Juan Soto, he went 3 for 3 with 3 walks and 3 runs on a perfect day at the plate, reaching base 6 times in a game for the first time in his career. Alonso launched a pair of 2-run shots for his 23rd multi-homer game, breaking a tie with Darryl Strawberry for the most in Mets history. He went deep in the 3rd and 8th to give him 17 homers and 61 RBI this year. McNeil connected leading off the second inning and added a 3-run shot in the 4th for his 3rd career multi-homer game. Alonso and McNeil both finished with 3 hits and 4 RBI. Alvarez also had 3 of New York's 17 hits. Tyler McGill allowed 2 runs over 5 innings to win for the second time in his last 8 starts. Paul Blackburn worked 4 innings for his first Major League save. Following an off day today, the Mets will open a 3-game series at home against the Washington Nationals starting tomorrow night. In the Bronx, Yankees dropped the finale and rubber game of their 3-game series against the Red Sox. Final score 11-7. Carlos Rodon gets the loss there. He wasn't great. 5 innings pitched, 3 hits, 5 earned runs, 5 Ks, and 3 walks. He had home runs from DJ LeMahieu in the 5th inning. Aaron Judge had 2 blasts, his 23rd, or he has 23 on the year now in the 1st inning and in the 9th inning. Bookend homers for Judge and RBIs from Grisham, an RBI walk in the bottom of the 6th, and Jazz Chisholm Jr. had a sac fly in the bottom of the 6th as well. Following an off day today, the Yankees will open a 3-game series in Kansas City against the Royals starting tomorrow night. To the hardwood, your final from OKC. The Thunder beating the Pacers 123-107, dominating that game 2. That series is now tied at 1 game apiece in the NBA Finals. And tonight on the ice, in the Stanley Cup Final, you get Game 3 between the Oilers and the Panthers down in Florida. That's an 8 p.m. puck drop. That is your sport.
Wait. You forgot the big UFC event over the weekend.
Oh, you keep dropping these little nuggets on me, man. You know.
Did you see what's that?
No, first you had Carlos Alcaraz, and now you got the
this
big
is
UFC
what I was
event.
watching.
Okay.
So
right, no, I know you're into this. Okay.
Merab, who is just this incredible UFC boxer, defended his title on Saturday night. President Trump was at the arena. It was was in Newark, at the Rock.
Oh, yeah, big USA chance.
Yeah, and it was a rematch against Sugar Sean O'Malley, who I thought was going to win.
Yeah.
But Marab, man, he got him in a chokehold, and that was it. He put the guy to sleep, and it was over.
Now, those guys are twigs, like those. That's the lightweight division?
Yeah, it's 135 pounds, 125.
Because you look at this Sean O'Malley guy, he's he's 120 pounds soaking wet.
He's 135 pounds, and I think he's 5'9".
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Marab
is shorter.
You still got that pink hair going on, that pink afro
No,
going?
he said he was trying to take it more serious now, so he'd win this match, but he ended up losing in the second round.
More serious now?
Yeah.
Really?
1 o'clock in the morning that match went on, by the way.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
and that was the main event?
That was the main event.
So you got to sit through everything else if you want to buy the card. You got to pay $100 and then sit up until 1 o'clock in the morning?
Well, that's unless you have kids who know how to steal it.
Oh, hey, now. Right. Found a good stream, Noam Laden. How about it? All right.
But Marab won, and then he jumped over the ring.
Yeah.
And he went over, and the first thing he did was hug Donald Trump.
How about that?
Yeah.
Look at that. All right. Pro-America. You got to love that.
Yeah, I love it when it's rough. He does. I do, yeah.
That's your Sports Noam. I'm Justin Ellick. 77 WABC.
WABC News Time 5:50. New York City Department of Transportation asking us to warn you about this parking payment scam. It says scammers have posted at least one QR code on parking meters across the city, apparently, that directs users to a third-party website asking for payment information. Normally, you pay on Park NYC, that's the app, but apparently people have been fooled by this, so the Department of Transportation wants you to know that QR code that is on some of those parking meters is not legit.
We got to be able to feel safe spending our money without that being tarnished, especially if we're moving to the digital age and we're using technology. We want technology to be a safe platform that we can use.
Yeah, New York City DOT telling us that over the weekend they began inspecting all meters throughout the city. They actually sent some in-app warnings to users not to use that QR code.
It's irie, so I gotta watch. I got to be very careful.
Well, if it's happening to one of us, it can happen to any one of us.
Yeah, he's right. The parking department asking anyone who sees more of these QR codes to rip them down, by the way, and then report them on 311 to Park NYC. 5:52. Yesterday marked the 1 week since a firebomb attack in Boulder, Colorado, where that creep threw fire, Molotov cocktails at pro-Israel supporters who were in a rally. So yesterday in Boulder, thousands showed up in solidarity to show they wouldn't be afraid.
I got choked up. It's just an amazing outpouring of both community support and law enforcement.
And here in the city, Mayor Adams took action, he said, to protect Jewish New Yorkers, codifying the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism in New York City. He was at a synagogue in Tribeca, the mayor signing this executive order to combat anti-Semitism. The definition would include accusing Jews of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust.
I am signing a historic executive order to implement the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition.
Yeah, lots of people there, including Dr. Phil, given the fact the Jewish community makes up about 10% of the city's population. The UJA Federation CEO, he was part of this event, also took part in a hostage event in Central Park. He said, this is all good news.
The fact that that could happen in this country makes it all the more important for us in New York, the largest Jewish community in the world outside of Israel, to not be silent.
Yeah, so, by the way, those 55 that are still being held hostage, one's dead or alive, this yesterday marked 611 days in captivity in Gaza. 5:53, two members of Congress visiting 26 Federal Plaza for a closer look at what they say is inhumane immigration practices happening inside. State Representatives Congressman Adriano Espaillat, Nydia Velasquez said they waited in the lobby for about an hour, then were denied access to the 10th floor of the immigration courthouse. According to immigration advocates, they've been informed the conditions within this detainment facility are potentially hazardous. So Nydia Velasquez and Adriano Espaillat showed up over the weekend to take a look for themselves.
Our constitutional right and our constitutional duty is to have oversight over these agencies and to ensure that we supervise and ascertain whether the conditions in these facilities are just or not.
What is it that they're hiding? Well, they're not hiding anything because we know what's going on. They are apprehending people that are following the rules.
Now, the people who run 26 Federal Plaza say they would have been happy to give these Congresspeople a tour if they had been giving a little bit more notice. WABC News Time 5:54, early voting ended in New Jersey yesterday. Of course, Election Day for the primary is on Tuesday. You're voting for assembly members, and at the top of the ticket, voting for your candidate, whether in the Republican or Democratic Party, for governor. So far, 300,000 people voted during early voting. That's a fair amount of people.
Let's get it accomplished so it's not hanging over our head. Not that voting is anything to hang over your head. It's a privilege and one that I don't take lightly, or my wife. You know, we're Americans, you know, and that's what we want to do is act like Americans, be Americans. So that's what Smokey and I have set out to do this morning.
I think Smokey was his dog. So they voted yesterday. 300,000, that seems like a lot, but I'd have to compare it to years past. And, of course, yesterday, the big Puerto Rican Day parade up Fifth Avenue. Tons of people showing up, crowds of spectators lining Fifth Avenue in Midtown to watch the parade's colorful floats, musical performances.
I was born in Arecibo. It's something that I take with me.
I remember coming to the parade, being on one of those big hot lines and being perched on my father's shoulders.
Yeah, this year's parade theme, Plantando Bandera, planting roots. It recognizes how Puerto Rican communities across the diaspora, as they call it, have established deep roots and contributed to American society.
Celia Cruz, Tito Puente, so I started young, the great-grandparents already, so.
Talking about 50 years. I feel the connection to my ancestors, my family, they're all over there. I was born and raised here, but I frequent Puerto Rico as my beautiful island.
Now, there was one complaint from some of the older parade goers. They say they're not representing some of the older music like they used to in the parade, and they say there's too much rap. That's what they were complaining about yesterday.
Thanks for listening to the News Hour with Noam Laden. You can hear the News Hour with Noam Laden weekday mornings at 5 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit ActiveDay.com to apply.